Hey everybody, so we're finally here, doing our civic duty here on the final Wednesday before the first Tuesday of November, which, as we all know, the U.S. Constitution stipulates Apple will finish announcing all of the year's products in time for the crucial holiday season. My name is Justin Searles. I have a podcast. It's this one. You've already found it, so I don't need to tell you where to go, other than to ask you, please stay. Please don't go yet. Give me at least 2 hours of your time. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. Thanks for being here with me for version 23 of Breaking Change. The title is M4 Supermax. I'll let that one just marinate. Let's start off. Let's just dive right in. Life. What's going on? A lot of new products, so I'm excited. Doing some retail therapy. I heard once in biology class in college, maybe this was in high school, and maybe it wasn't a class so much as, I don't know, something I read in highlights or weekly reader as an elementary school kid, or something I made up, or that Nickelodeon show about science. But I heard at one point that basically, the human body will work through like all of the cells in the body roughly every 7 years. And surely some of that literal matter gets reused in other cells and whatnot. But it stuck with me most of my life, thinking about how over the course of 7 years, you're basically an all new person. So you are your own, ship of Theseus, the I don't know if it's apocryphal or mythical, but like the Greek ship that, like, if you were, it was a thought experiment, right? Like if you have this ship and you replace all of the wood piece plank by plank over a long period of time such that no initial plank still exists, is it still the ship of Theseus? Is it still the same ship? So it's a philosophical question. And so, you can apply that to ourselves. And now that so much of what we do is synced in the cloud, and it's just all online all the time, and you pick up anything you think of platforms more than products. When I'm on my old Windows PC, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'm in the Windows ecosystem now, regardless of which Windows device I'm using. Pick up an Apple device. I turn on a new Apple device, right? I pair it, and then I just sort of let it, masticate for 2 or 3 days as it chews on all of its iCloud CUD. And what it and its neural engine poop out are, roughly the same experience I'm going to have on any other Apple Watch. So I think about this with hardware because I'm so aggressive about trading and upgrading hardware that I just treat basically all of the computer and consumer electronics that I use in my life, I just treat like rentals. I'm the guy. If I was into cars, it would make sense for me to lease, maybe, or so I'm told, where you just always want to be in the newest car. So, you use stuff for a little bit. But of course, like, other than the iPhone upgrade program, there aren't a lot of actual programs to just subscribe to the latest hardware. But you can effectively do it if you don't value your time, because you can just, aggressively go and trade in for the next thing. So it was that time of year, finally. I think Amazon's been very slow to update the Kindles, but we bought a new Kindle Paperwhite. It said on the box 12, but like other places were saying it was the 8th one. I don't fucking know. No one cares enough about the Paperwhite or the Kindle to really need names. It's just the one for sale right now. And since you buy it from Amazon, and Amazon now has those prominent, you're looking at an older model of this. Are you sure you don't want to buy the right one? Doesn't matter. The new Paperwhite is marginally faster than the old one. It's a smidge bigger, and it's got slightly better contrast than the previous one. We bought it for Becky because she'd been on the Kindle Oasis, which has buttons, which is nice. But the battery's small, and because it's got a metal back, it gets hotter faster. And critically, because we're about to go on a trip, and we're planning our loadouts, The only thing in either of our bags that's not yet USB-C powered is this stupid fucking Kindle Oasis. And so I was like, you know what? New Paperwhites are probably coming next week. And then I was right, and then they did. And then I bought one, and it's got USB-C. And so far, she seems to like it. Although, of course, you know, losing buttons is never fun. And yeah, it seems like a pretty solid upgrade. I'm on the prior Paperwhite, and I'm a little envious. She got the one with the green back. It's a very handsome book reader. But there's no real discernible reason that I'd upgrade, except for the fact that here's how my brain works in real time. Except, you know, like, because I'm always reading books in Japanese, it means that I'm pulling up the dictionary a lot, which means that touchscreen performance and like the responsiveness of the CPU to like pull up that dictionary quickly, that's like that many more lookups that I can do. And like the longer that I have to wait, or the less responsive it is to like, you know, getting wet, you know, the less that I'm going to read. And so if I just, you know, paid this $150 and then maybe got $75 on last year's Kindle, so I'm really only just paying $75, you know, like then I'm going to be reading more, I'm going to be learning faster, and isn't at the end of the day that's going to be worth it. So anyway, I'm going to pause this so I can, now that I've justified it, go and buy myself one too. Anyway, all that to say, it seems like a solid upgrade, and it definitely seems like Amazon is not interested in making more Kindles with buttons. So if that's what you're holding out for, it doesn't seem like they're in some huge rush. If anything, it makes more sense that they might introduce a gesture system, like tap the back, you know, to page turn. Because really the thing you lose when you lose the buttons is that you have to move your finger over the screen, especially to that. So you might have to change your hand position to change pages. And if you are like me and you're outside by a pool and you might have like greasy fingers or moisture on your hands, basically limits my, you know, sessions of reading to like 30 minutes whenever I'm using it. Other life news, a lot of purchase thoughts. I've been buying a lot of garbage. I've been reading a few times. I'll share a link. Literally the first thing to come up on Google for me is what I will share you, as opposed to whatever it is that I actually read, because I don't know what that is anymore. I saw at least a couple articles of people complaining that black plastic is apparently bad. It's like worse than other plastic. Somebody even said it was like, you got black plastic, like cheap black plastic from some, you know, Chinese manufacturer that you bought on Amazon. It's going to have all like just chewed up assholes of microchips in it. You know, used car parts, old, you know, wet car battery cells just crunched up, and now it's your spatula. And as those plastics break down, they go inside you. And I don't, you know, I think that the phrase forever chemical is a really brilliant piece of branding. I don't think that the chemicals probably stay inside of you. Although that would be funny if, like, you know, given the 7 years thing, if the chemicals really do stay inside of you for 7 years, or excuse me, for forever, right? That those chemicals, just those forever chemicals that you got from your spatula, maybe on your Teflon non-stick frying pan, where the Teflon's also going inside you forever, and those are just hanging out, and they're like, hey, we're just here for 80 years, and this body keeps getting replaced every 7 years. So you're less real than the garbage that you ingest, thanks to, you know, globalization. So that's neat. All that to say, I used that as an excuse to go and buy new plastic cookware that is a lighter blue plastic. So, you know, instead of ingesting old, what would it be, like, you know, RAM chips that have been chewed up into plastics, maybe it's, you know, I'm imagining like headlight enclosures from cars and lithium-ion battery pouches, maybe. So that's like, you know, and the carcinogenic scale, probably less bad. And while I was at it, I was like, well, if I'm going to replace the cookware, boy, this is becoming, feels like talk therapy now. I'm like exposing just how broken I am. I'm like, well, if I'm going to replace the cookware, I really want to clean out these two fucking drawers, because an accretion has occurred of just nonsense, where we have like 4 different sets of measuring cups, but like none of them are fully complete, and none of them are shallow enough for the drawer to fully close if they're stacked. So you end up with a junk drawer basically. And hey, a well coiffed, like a well curated junk drawer where you don't carefully put everything in its place is actually fine. And there's been I've read a like literal research abstract about how like that's actually faster for chefs to have a little bit of controlled chaos in where things go, because the marginal amount of time to put everything in the perfect place and pull it out of the perfect place for certain situations. And when you keep the, you know, the sample size of those things that they're grabbing small, it's actually not a big deal. But it is, wherever that line is, we are beyond it. So I was like, well, you know, I don't want to just add more, you know, blue crap in this mix of other black crap in these drawers. So I was like, you know, we've never really invested in good knives, so we should buy new knives. And then as soon as you go into the, you know, you search Google for best knives, and you're like, oh, this is going to end poorly. So then you preempt that, or you let it go poorly. And then you just put space and then Reddit. And so then you just look at the Reddit, and then you find, oh, I think it was like, oh, the subreddit chef knives. And then another subreddit that seemingly splintered off. There was like a schism in the church of chef knives, and now there's true chef knives, and they both have, you know, overly precious advice about Japanese versus Western blades. And they're all talking about the hardness scales of their different knives, and whether to professionally sharpen or never sharpen, or how to you know, how to hone, and the hone versus sharpen, and you know, the only they're enlightened, right? They're the very smooth-brained chef fans, and so they're having arguments about whether or not you should literally wash the knife by hand with your fingertips, or if a non-abrasive cloth is okay. Whereas every, you know, few months, some Yahoo like me will be like, can you just recommend a knife that I can lazily throw in the dishwasher? And then they all just descend. It's like the one uniting thing. That is so they have the pile-ons that endure. Because that's always where I start with this, is like, I want to buy the nicest knives I can that are dishwasher safe. And then anyone who knows anything about knives will just find they'll cut themselves out of the woodwork with their fancy knives. And they'll be hey, that's not possible. There's no such thing. The heat from the steam from the water from the dishwasher is going to ruin, it's going to dull your knives. And then when your knives are dull, there will be slippage. You know, you will slip on an onion, and then you're going to cut off your daughter's toes. It's like it goes from 0 to grim German fairy tale very quickly, whenever people reject the advice of the true chef knives people. So anyway, I bought some knives, and they can't go in the dishwasher. They're from the brand Shun. Shun is I don't know if it's a Japanese, but it looks like a US brand that is selling labeled, like relabeled, or freshly labeled. Like, they have a supplier in Japan making Japanese knives. But I think the knives themselves, like, I've never seen this brand. What the fuck do I know about knives? Why am I even saying this? Anyway, all that to say, the brand is fairly well respected. The knives are very hard. Their branding seems really good. I'll tell you, the box that they came in was very impressive. Shun means in season. So if you're in the grocery store in Japan, like, it changes over every month, which is really fun if you're just there like me trying to like figure out what the staples are, and you finally figure them out, and then a month passes and you're like, what the fuck is this? What's Hakusai? What the fuck do I do with Hakusai? And it's a big old fucking 2.5 foot long cabbage. And then they say, oh, well, that's to make nabe. What's nabe? Okay, well, it's anything in a pot where you like cook the pot around the table. And so then I'm like, you know, I've got 15 new ingredients I've never used before, and I'm buying special broth. And then I also have to go to the electronic store to buy all this new equipment, because you have to cook it at the table. So I've got like a special little grill. So that's what I associate the word shun with, is, oh, the pain in the ass where, like, now in in June we all eat this, but in July we all eat this, which is fun. It's a great way to stay on your toes, and eating fresh ingredients is wonderful. So that's a cute name. So about those, and I immediately went to YouTube, Reddit, and I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to take care of these. Like get a YouTube playlist of safe usage and maintenance and care of these blades, and I'm finally gonna become somebody who takes care of my shit. So I am at the stage of have done that much work and have unpacked the very pretty box and the very pretty blades, and I took a couple of pictures. But I'm not yet at the point of have received the 15 disparate Amazon packages for all of this nonsense. And I'm going to wait until all of it's here, and then I'm going to empty out the 2 drawers in their entirety. And then I'm going to, I would not say this brings me joy, but I will get a certain satisfaction from seeing the drawer be empty and then cleaning the drawer, because it's only really possible to clean a drawer when there's not shit in it. Clean the drawer and then fill it up with new shit. So that's coming. That's probably next week's task. Other purchases I use, I think it was actually Aaron Patterson. He's the guy who does the puns. You're going to hear one of his puns later. I use a sleeping mask called the Manta Sleep Mask. And when I first ordered it 5 years ago, it was the only thing that they sell. They just had this one kind, but they've clearly gotten some amount of success. And so now they got a whole product line of these kind of fully blackout wraparound sleep masks. So the goal with these is that they're comfortable. You can sleep on your side comfortably, and they will be totally blackout because they use these big foam cups that, encircle the eye. And not to bring up snoring again, but the stupid fucking snoring app that I've been using, which they're still working on a fix. A bug that I'd mentioned where my AirPods will switch to it and then it'll cause a crash. I was like, you know what? If my sleep mask had Bluetooth and I played from the iPad, then the iPhone could still record out of its real good microphones. And I could get the snoring stuff on my watch. So again, adding more technology to this. Now my side of the bed would have to have a phone charger, an iPad, a sleep mask with Bluetooth headphones built in, a phone, and AirPods. No, wait, no AirPods. See, no, I'm eliminating. That's fine. I'm doing right. So if I have this menagerie, right, and I got 2 discrete, wireless pairings going on. The watch is talking to the phone for the notifications, and the sleep mask headphones are talking to the iPad, and nary the 2 shall meet from a Bluetooth pairing perspective. That was the plan. So I bought this $150 eye mask, and let me tell you, convergence device. You remember convergence device, that phrase that we were using in the early 2000s? We were all talking about how your MP3 player and your phone and your camera will one day all be the same thing. But all of the early at-bats that companies took with this prior to the iPhone were just straight up terrible. And then the iPhone itself was bad, right? Couldn't hold on to phone calls, was bad at a lot of the tasks, was obviously it was a potato cam for the first 5 years. I feel like if sleep mask headphones are ever going to become a proper product convergence category, we are at that stage now where it's just bad. So don't buy this. Normally the first thing you realize when you unbox this is that you typically will wear a sleep mask over your eyes and then over your ears, above your ears, right? Just like you would wear glasses. And why would you do that? Well, it's because our ears are kind of like nature's little cartilage hooks, and so it won't slip down your face. But if you wear this one that way, then the headphones are now above they're playing into the crown of your head, which isn't what you want. You gotta wear it around the ears, which is unnatural. Just God didn't design any of this to happen this way. And it means that unless you make it super goddamn tight, it will fall off. But my head is so fucking fat. I got a big head. I got a deceptively fat head that I could barely get that fucker even just to close. So now I'm like scratching this Velcro to close the loop to get it over my ears. And then it still just finds a way to fall down anyway. So then they ship, just like, so when I complained about this in February, Apple ships the Vision Pro with a very cool looking knit just around the back of your headband that kind of cradles your head. This is the exact same physics problem, right? You got a heavy thing in the front of your eyes, and then you're trying to support it with like a single loop underneath your ears. So they came up with the top strap thing, the dual loop band, which was very cheap and looked like an afterthought. Well, this product also must have had their design. It looks just like the cool design that they want, where it's really comfortable. And then they're like, oh shit. So they just throw another piece of Velcro in there, like a long strap. And they're like, you can connect this to the Velcro in the inside of the sides and use that as a top strap. So you're kind of wearing it like a hat. And you'll never guess, but it's not comfortable and it's really hard to kind of, position correctly. And then it just causes the whole thing to ride up because the strap isn't long enough, because guess what? I have a fat head. So now the whole goddamn sleeping mask apparatus is either falling down my face or 1.5 inches above my ear holes. And I finally got it. And this is like in the context of, in my office, really sweating this shit, really sitting down and being like, all right, well, I'm going to draw a free body diagram out on the table. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do the math and do the work. And so I got it on my face. And I was realizing it comes with no charge. And so I can't pair the Bluetooth. So I had to figure out, I plugged it in for hours and it finally woke up, and I paired it to Bluetooth, and I played some audio. And it's funny, it actually has these two little like blue tags on the side that you slide forward and backward to align the speakers on each side of this mask, which are all internal. They're hidden. That's why you have those little pull tabs to move these around. It moves the speakers to position them where your ears are. And that's fine. The problem is that I kept feeling like I wasn't quite getting it because it was so tinny. Like the audio quality was so poor and so quiet. And then I realized, oh, these are just also really bad headphones. So that was cool. And I was pretty close to being like, I'm ready to give up on this. But you know what? I came this far. Let's give it one night. So I gave it one night, and I was, realizing how difficult it is to get the thing playing while it's strapped to your head, because you can't see, because it's a fucking blackout mask. So how the goddamn hell am I going to use a touch screen to play and pause my fucking content so that I can pair this thing, so I can get it on, but I only get it to start pairing because I can't tell if it's pairing or not, because it just has one goddamn red light in the middle. And that light means both I'm turned on but not paired, I'm on and paired, or I'm off and I'm turning off. Like, it's just what the red light does not give you the information you would need. You need to have your ears by the speaker to know what the tone is playing. So I finally get it all, combobulated, managed to not wake Becky up in the process. And I listen to a podcast, and I do what I always do, and I fall asleep within 5 minutes, because the podcasts I listen to, much like this one, do not matter. So I feel safe and sound listening to somebody else's voice as I drift off into nightmare land, which is where I go when I sleep. And I'll tell you, it was one of the worst fucking nights of sleep of my life. I actually had I have nightmares almost every night. And that's, I've spent enough time on good therapist topics. I'm not paying you enough for that. I had a nightmare where the thrust of the nightmare was that I was like overheating, like the temperature kept going up, and there was not enough circulation or not enough airflow, which for me is something that I have a general fear of, which is why I always sleep with a fan. I really need a lot of airflow. If I'm in an elevator and it's not moving, or a plane that doesn't have AC going and we're stuck on the tarmac, or a hotel room in an office building and you can't open the windows, or an interior cabin in a cruise ship. If I can't get airflow when I feel like I need it, I will just panic. This is a cool thing that started in my mid-30s. And I'm also prone to overheating, especially in bed, which wakes me up and stresses me out. And I was having this dream, and it was really bad. And I woke up in a full body sweat, despite being on my refrigerated bed. So a full body cold sweat. And I go to the bathroom and I take this mask off and, peeking under the eye to get to the bathroom safely. And I take the mask off, and then I just realize that like this mask is so much heavier and so much thicker and made with more durable and tight knit fabric than the original mask, that the mask itself is like extremely warm to the touch. So clearly it's absorbed a lot of my big stupid head's heat. And that heat is just going right back to big stupid head. So I'm just like literally cooking my brain. So no wonder it was generating nightmares to try to get my ass out of bed. So all that to say, I'm probably going to keep the knives, because no matter how bad a job they do, that'll be my fault. But I will be returning the Bluetooth eye mask, because for how bad a job it did, I'm confident resting the blame on the Manta Sleep people. So if they hear this, I will gladly take you as a sponsor and recant all of this for money. Not even, you know what? Not even that much money. You write an email, podcast@searles.co, and you say, hey, I'm the Manta Sleep people, and this was bad PR, so can we just pay you? I'll let you fill in the amount, right? Or you can send me a blank check, and I'll write my own value, because I know my self-worth. And then I will go on air and I'll say, you know what? I tried it again. It was amazing. And my life is so much better now because I'm listening to music while I sleep. The soundscapes are providing me with a therapy that you just can't get anywhere else, or whatever the fuck you want me to say. So soliciting that sponsorship. Well, where do I go from there? That's all the shit I bought. I think. I was having a conversation with someone about they were talking about a wedding, but my wires get crossed sometimes, because I live in imagination land, and then when I go to sleep I go to nightmare land. I was imagining something, and they're talking about a wedding, and the various rites of passage that we all live through are similar enough that you'd forgive me for doing this, but they were talking about like a particular thing in a ceremony, and I suddenly, my brain flipped, and I thought they were talking about a funeral. And as they were speaking, my brain's still thinking funeral while they're talking about a wedding. And the conversation got to a point where they're talking about the service. And I was like, hey, whoa, sorry to interrupt, but the whole speak now or forever hold your peace thing, that if you've ever been to a wedding and actually got asked that, I would love for you to write in. I've been to one wedding where they asked it, where the priest or whoever, the officiant, official, whoever, a dude on stage was like, yo, speak now or forever hold your peace. And everyone's like looking around, and then no one speaks. And he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't wait long enough. I hadn't worked up the courage. I didn't know I'd have the opportunity. I get why we don't normally ask that at weddings, but like it makes for great TV and movies. And so it's always in the TV and movies when you have to have some sort of runaway bride kind of thing. When I say runaway bride kind of thing, I'm referring to the Julia Roberts film where she's in the poster with the tennis shoes. It's very cute. But doesn't it just make more sense to have that be part of a ceremony at a funeral? We talk about funerals, traditionally as this sort of spiritual send-off. We do these rites, ancient times, people would do these rites so that the person would wind up in the good place and not the bad place. And then eventually it was sort of a personal, reflective, somber mourning for the people mourning as much as anything, for them to be able to grieve. And now we're we also see, celebrations of life who whether or not they really truly grapple with the gravity of a death. There's bright colors and dancing, and we just watched the Jim Henson Idea Man documentary. Becky hadn't seen it, so you rewatched it. He's at the end. You're everyone's smiling and laughing, and they're like not breaking, but like I'm here in my chair on watching this Disney Plus thing and crying. So funerals, we've clearly there is an appetite in Western society to mix it up, to try out some new shit at funerals. So all I'm saying is that when I die, I would love for somebody to stand up and say, hey, speak now or forever hold your peace about this motherfucker. And give everybody a chance just to sort of air their grievances about me, because I don't want that now because I'm really thin skinned and I don't need your feedback. And I kind of, I'm good. I'm all right. I've reoriented my life around not needing to care what you think about me. But when I'm dead, I won't be able to hear that. So go nuts. Have fun. Say whatever the goddamn well please you. Goddamn well please. Oh my goodness, I made a mistake. Say whatever you goddamn well please about me because I'm not going to be there and I won't hear it. And if it makes you feel better, that's great. In fact, I think having a few people get up and be real angry and say some just toxic bullshit about me might make them feel better. Maybe that would be cathartic, or maybe it would just, finally be the chance for you to get something off your chest and get that release that you need. That if you have that now with me and saying something really, really dark and cutting about a time that I hurt you or some real deep-seated shit, I'm still saying, don't tell me, deal with that shit with your own therapist. Like, I don't want to know. I'm sorry, I just don't care. But if you don't mind just shutting up for the next 30 to 60 years, depending on how long I last, feel free to come to the funeral and we'll work it out. I'll try to remember to get this into my instructions for my ceremony so that there's a speak now or forever hold your peace thing. But I might cap it at we'll play it by popcorn rules, so you have popcorn popping. And when there's more than 2 seconds between pops, that's when hey, it's about to burn. That's when you open the microwave door, you turn off the heat on the popper. We'll do something like that. So you guys can all go as long as you want, but as long as there's a more than, call it, 45-second airtime gap between people complaining about me, I think that's when you call it. All right. Because to go any longer, and now you're just wasting other people's day. So maybe we'll have a write-in, you can write a little note and put it in a box, and then bury the box with me so I can live with it forever. If I'm worth burying, right? Will we even be doing that then? Will we be shooting people into space? I don't know, man. Yeah, that went somewhere. Speaking of culture, I was talking to a manager friend who is every bit as invested in sort of the, he's a Rands and Repose reader. He fucking cult. He's real into management shit and always is excited about these methodologies that all boil down to it's a people problem. And I'm like, oh my God, wow, what an interesting way to say that same thing we've been saying our entire fucking careers. That's real great, dude. He doesn't listen to the podcast, so I feel more free to characterize this conversation. And that's the type. But because I've been less in that game and less in that world, I haven't been... My business meeting jargon is getting outdated. And so whenever I hear a new one, I react ooh, like somebody just tickled me. Instead of what I normally... If you're at work every day and you're just starting to hear these things oh yeah, now everyone's calling anything that's a problem, that's a big rock, or they're saying, hey, and there's jokes and memes oh, reach out and let's touch base and let's take this offline, or let's parking lot this item. I'm familiar with the last, maybe I'm really dialed into what nonsense people said from 2003 to 2022 or so, but I'm out of touch now. So my new favorite one that this fella shared was like, I said a thing and he said, you know what, let's double click on that. And then I died. I died a death from which I will not recover. He said, let's double click on that. And I seriously was like looking for a computer. And that's the funny thing about this phrase. If you're not picking it up from context, he means to say like, let's dive in, as if this phrase is relatively new in business jargon ease, but also computers don't work this way anymore. In fact, there's good luck finding a user interface that anyone actually fucking uses where double clicking will do anything good. I mean, in general, this current generation has been taught if you double click a button, it will probably send the message twice to the server and then fuck up your shit. Oh, now you bought 2 of these, dildos or whatever on accident, and you only need the 1 dildo. You're not ready for 2 at once. And that's what people think when they think of double clicking a button in a computer. I am old enough that, like, yes, Windows 95, I remember it. I remember DOS shell. I'm pretty sure you double clicked in DOS shell, which is sort of like an ncurses style, like a textual GUI that organized information so you could navigate the file system with the arrow keys and stuff. Did it have mouse support? I don't remember. Anyway, I do remember Windows 95 really well and the Windows Explorer, and you would double click a folder to open that folder and see the contents of that folder. And so, yes, let's double click on that. Definitely is an allusion to you double click a thing to expand it to get to the next layer of information. That's absurd. It's just stupid because even Windows now, I'm pretty sure all of it, Windows Explorer, you single click stuff to go another layer deeper. And everything now is a website. So now we're just, you know what? Business people, you can have that jargon. Here's what we're going to do. You can keep saying, let's double click on a abstract concept if you promise to stop turning everything into an Electron app and you start shipping native apps again. Deal? Right? Like, what if we got more real Mac apps and real Windows apps written with real operating system provided user interface toolkits, and the buttons were real buttons and not just fucking CSS around a div that made it look like a button with a border radius, right? If you'll grant me that, and then you make those buttons and, DoubleClick does something. If DoubleClick does something in the digital world again, then you can use it in this abstract sense. But if you're going to keep on saying, let's double click on that in a meeting while you greenlight yet another React Native and Electron app project, I'm going to fucking lose my mind. The next, only other thing that was interesting since our version 22, we went to see Book of Mormon in Orlando. It was at the Dr. Phillips Center, the Walt Disney Theater. So it's confusing because it's called the Walt Disney Theater, and I'm sure there's about 55 theaters on the planet named that. But it's not anywhere near Disney World. So we have to drive to the other side of Orlando, like downtown Orlando. So which means we have to go on I-4, which is one of the deadliest stretches of highway in America. It's just where, you get everyone at once on I-4, because whether it's the east-west arterial highway that goes through Orlando. So if you're coming from or going to either of the coasts, if you're coming from the airport and if you're a frazzled dad tourist, you're going to be on I-4 and you're going to be driving like a maniac because you're white knuckling it because you're in way too big of a rental car and you don't know where you are and you're already late and your kids are yelling at you and they're all hungry, right? Or if you're if you're a local in Orlando and you're just commuting, then you're just taking up space. That's fine. If you're somebody passing through Orlando because you live in one of the exurb rural areas to the east or west, it's pretty Mad Maxy out there. And so, it's got this sort of like every man for themselves, like, hey, here's me and my, motorcycle with a sawed-off shotgun over my shoulder kind of vibe, with people driving and weaving in between lanes. You've got, sort of just like, if you go to the east, you get Cocoa Beach and Daytona Beach and New Smyrna, which are kind of like not known as the classiest sort of beachgoers in the world. So you get a lot of like drunk driving and a lot of tweakers, people who are just, no one's sending their best on I-4. And whenever I have to drive on I-4, I get stressed the fuck out. So I had to drive there, and my heart rate was way higher than it needed to be. And then parking was, of course, nonsense. And just, I could do without that. I'm looking forward to having a quadcopter or a car that drives itself that I can trust. Because it took me, the whole first song is kind of like, I don't even remember. I saw it and I remember seeing it, but like all I was really seeing were the blood vessels in my eyeballs slowly recede as I calmed myself from just how stressful that drive is. So that's cool. But on that trip, going there and coming back, I saw 2 Jeeps that had little rubber ducks. You know, like the rubber ducks are in right now. I don't know why. Well, I do have a good sense why, because some Chinese manufacturer started creating rubber ducks and made them in such a way that either like, I don't know if it's like a stamp print or a custom molding or whatever it is, but like you can very easily, as a business, brand your own ducks and like, you know, use them as swag. And so rubber ducks are having a moment. You know, you go to the boathouse nearby and like you can get a razzmatazz or a blue raz martini cocktail. And it's like a little blue martini and a little glittery, and it's got a little tiny duck floating in it, you know. So a lot of rubber ducks. Why is that relevant? Well, I used to think that there was this one Jeep either in my neighborhood or nearby that had a row of ducks on the dashboard facing the windshield, such that whenever you crossed paths with this Jeep, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's the Jeep with all the ducks. And then I saw another red Jeep with it, and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that's different because this one's newer. And it was this night, on the way there, I saw a green Jeep with the ducks. And then on the way back, I saw a white Jeep with the ducks. And that's when I realized I added this note and I'm talking about this now. I have not Googled whether this is a thing, but it's clearly a thing. Maybe it's a local thing. I don't know. Jeep owners thinking it would be cool to line up 25 little rubber ducks of different colors and ethnicities. Like duck ethnicities, you know? Like mallards versus they're all kinds of ducks. They got little hats. Some of them have glasses. So Jeep owners, I think, have always famously wanted to express themselves for some reason. And maybe this is just how Jeep owners are doing it this year. So that should have provided me a moment of levity. Hey, look at these ducks. But because it was like the third time I'd seen it in a Jeep, it actually just made me feel really alone, which wasn't helpful. So anyway, the show's really good. The show has lots of Orlando references, and the cast did a good job of hamming them up. The audience did a good job going wild, and then the cast did a good job not soaking up all that applause and just steamrolling ahead with the fucking play. So I wish more musicals were just irreverent humor, because I like that, and I don't like every other production typically that I see. Yeah, if you know the ducks thing, by the way, if you know what this goddamn story is with these stupid ducks, please email podcast@searles.co, and that will be my first investigative journalism story. I'm going to break the news. I will not Google it, however. Handful of things to follow up about from last version or previous episodes. It's basically the end of beta season if you've been a beta user and you wanted to use Apple Intelligence, especially because 18.1 and all the other Apple stuff came out. I was on that beta, and then pretty immediately jumped one of my devices to the next beta so that I can do even more Apple Intelligence stuff. So I'm on the wait list for what I really want to be able to do is these Genmoji. I want to generate a whole bunch of emoji for all of my feelings. And the only reason I would use those and not the Bitmojis that people would send is like, those are not emoji. Those are just images. And iMessage stickers are also a different thing. What I'm talking about is these are really going to be emoji. Like you can have a fried shrimp that is frowning at you because you have fried it. You know, sad fried shrimp with a hat. And then that'll be in your emoji picker, and you can just put it in text, like just like that. So that's what I want to do. It's all I want in this world, among all the other things I talk about wanting. So I'm already on to the next beta, but for most people, the big stuff that Apple talked about at WWDC, like, you know, the new, and now with the new devices, you know, beta season's pretty much fully over. And if you, oh, by the way, if you are on the latest stuff, you still need to opt into Apple Intelligence, and you can do that from the settings. And then it's now the settings app, Apple Intelligence and Siri. And so it's per iCloud account. So you have to join up there, and they'll add you when they add you, because they have no idea how much this is going to cost from a server side perspective, or a customer support one, I guess. One of my favorite beta stories, this isn't from this year, because I aggressively get on the betas, and then I tend to use my devices very thoroughly. And I also I identify bugs as bugs instead of like as user error, and I report them back to people. I am very used to getting the feedback, especially when I'm on a beta. It's like, that's never happened before, or no one's ever said that before. And before I let them use that in a dismissive way, I say, well, you know, I get that a lot. Here's a whole bunch of logs or whatever it is you need. And I'm here to help you debug this because I just want this shit to work again. And one of these cases, I had these new smart blinds from a company called Roll Ease Acmeta or something. And they're one of the biggest manufacturers of motors for automated blind systems. And they had a hub that they sold, and that hub was actually, it only operated on HomeKit. It required HomeKit to use, as far as I knew. I think that they had one hub that was also like happy with, I don't know, Samsung Smart Things or something, Alexa. But this was only HomeKit. And the pairing process on, well, I don't know, some iOS 16 beta, it was like just didn't work. So I through my local here, who's great, Budget Blinds. If you do need custom blinds, the Budget Blinds here in Orlando, family who owns it, they're fucking great. That's a real endorsement, unpaid. He put me in touch with sort of his account manager over at Rollies, and I was like, "Here's what's happening." He's like, "Well, of course, it is the children who are wrong," and so it took many back and forths, and it was, I think we were in conversation for about a year and a half. His name was also Justin, good guy. A lot of back and forth, multiple Zooms, lots of me having to provide live streaming video evidence of my lion eyes of like, hey, look at this, is shit's fucked up, see, I'm not crazy. And then he because he wasn't a programmer or whatever, would have to take that back to his technologist, who, based on the quality of the overall app and ecosystem and stuff that they had, were probably not highly competent in the first place. It all felt like something that was just barely working to begin with. But then Apple makes, you know, some changes to HomeKit in such a way, maybe they were relying on a bug or undocumented behavior, who knows. But Apple made a change to HomeKit, a series of several changes. And in that time period, they also released the HomeKit new architecture. And this thing went from being kind of shaky on the beta to working inconsistently on the next release to the subsequent beta. And it was like, it wasn't even a major OS. It was like a point release where it just like hard stop. You couldn't pair anymore. It was impossible. And because I'd done all the basket of 35 tricks and the different handles to jiggle to get these goddamn blinds to work. And I'd let him know, it's like, I think this is it. I think she's dead, Jim. And he was in denial. And I was like, no, I think your business is going to stop when this releases. I think it's just, that's why I'm not calling you for a fix because I know that you can't fix it. I'm calling you to let you know to sell your stock. I don't know if you're publicly traded, but like, this is, you know, if you think you don't like talking to me, wait until you talk to all the other customers where every product in the field stops working. So I worked with our local guy to help him come up with a workaround because I needed one myself. And I landed on using Bond. The company Bond has a bridge. So you search for Bond bridge and you buy the bridge. And then it's sort of like a third party. It started, I think, as like an infrared IR blaster for IR accessories and RF accessories. Maybe just an RF blaster that was programmable. Well, they added shade support at some point, and they also added after that beta HomeKit support. So you can actually take those same shades and kind of like this roundabout way use a Bond bridge to control them and cut the rollies people out. And then, you know, they don't make their money off the fucking hub anyway, right? Like they're just selling motors, so they should be happy about this. But I turned him onto it because, like, he's a great guy and he was doing his best. He's replaced these things like 3 times for me for all sorts of nonsensical reasons. So got him on that train. He's selling and installing Bond bridges, and of course the performance is rock solid. And everything that everyone ever thought was a HomeKit problem is almost always like a bad hub problem or like, you know, poorly behaved hardware and software. That's the third party stuff. But I was just thinking about that, how when you ride the betas like I do, and you also interface with the world in the sort of, let's say, proactive way that I do, it's a really weird, the story is funny to me now that I have enough distance to look back on it. It just feels so weird to be a customer and to be calling a company, presumably a big company, because like, I mean, they're a major manufacturer. If they were a small company, I'd feel bad sharing this publicly, I guess. It just feels so weird, like calling a customer support line, or in this case, like an account manager who's like, you know, actually has access to talk to people in the company and be like, I think your business is about to end. Or like at least be under such hellfire that you're going to have a real bad 6 months trying to figure out how to like bucket water. I have heard from other people, not my guy. I've heard from other people. It has been a very hard couple of years, and a lot of the people are no longer there as they try to pivot and move to Matter so that the you know, people's thread radio, you know, your HomePod or whatever can talk to these motors directly to control the shades. So anyway, if you're looking for recommendations and you want HomeKit, Lutron's Serena brand of shades, that's a far better experience. I regret not getting those, although they're a little bit more limited into sort of the custom configurations and housings that you can use. Yeah, so that's part of the fun of beta season, is getting to you know, be like one of those auguries in ancient Rome, and you know, you just you kill a goat and you release a bunch of pigeons, and then you see where the blood splatters. And you're like, oh, this augurs poorly. Woe is you in mid-September. That's me. Other new stuff in the iOS. So at post-release, because this involved the FDA clearance, you know, Apple shipped the iOS hearing aid feature. And that was paved the way by the Biden administration changing rules about what can be sold as an over-the-counter hearing aid. And I finally got around to taking my hearing test. So if you click on your AirPods Pro 2nd generation from the settings, you can select a hearing test and do the hearing test. And if you do badly enough, then you can set up hearing aid. I did well enough that I didn't get to set up the hearing aid. And with that hearing aid mode, there's like a custom audio profile. So even like audio that you consume through those AirPods will just also sound better because it'll be making these adjustments for you, which is really neat. I wanted to try that. And I've kind of in the back of my head had for a while, like, is my hearing bad or is it just auditory processing? And the end result is, oh, okay, well, my hearing is actually quite good. I got like a -3 decibel loss in one ear and a 6 decibel loss in the other ear, which is apparently good for, I don't know. But the test itself is kind of hilarious because the way that I assume the way that a test of somebody's hearing works is you play sounds at different volumes, and then the user just taps the screen when they hear a tone. And if you can't hear the tone, you don't tap the screen, and then you just sort of see a little tiny circle progress bar. And the first ones are easy. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm killing it. I'm really good at this game. Like you're playing like what was it, like the Tap Tap Revolution, like the little like dance with your thumbs back in the original iPhone App Store. Like, yeah, I'm playing to the rhythm, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it stopped, and then it's like a long ass time with me not hearing any tones, and the progress bar is still inching forward. I'm like, is it broken? What's up? Like, obviously this is broken. Like, it shouldn't take this long. And then my dumb ass realizes, oh yeah, like this is me not hearing shit. This is me failing to hear tones that other people can hear. So we've known for a while that the super high frequencies I don't hear super well, which is annoying for Becky, who can hear them super well. So every now and then she'll complain about noises that I'm like, no, you're nuts. Which is unhelpful, unproductive. I've learned to shut up about that. Also new in terms of hardware purchases, I think I mentioned I bought Becky the new iPad Mini 7, and more just Searle's brain figuring out how to justify that. It took several days to successfully transfer it. The transfer process is a pain. I had always planned on transferring with a cable connection, and I learned many lessons in this process. But one of those lessons is that if you're going to connect 2 iPhones or 2 iPads together with a USB-C cable, connect it at the start of the process. Do not connect it at the part where it's like asking about transferring data, because that appears to not work. Also, make sure that you update the software on both sides. And the problem with this is that I was updating from an iPad that was already at max storage, and so I had to delete a whole bunch of shit to install the software update. But the whole point of wanting to do a direct transfer was so that I wouldn't delete and lose shit. So I had to go somewhere, right? So I spent way too much time clearing space so that I could do the software update, so that I could then direct transfer, and then reinstall and re-add the stuff that I'd had to delete in the first place from the other one. So that was a little bit of a pain. I didn't love it. And this is also an iPad that we have intentionally like an extra iCloud account on. So it's just for, focusing. It's just kind of use it like a Kindle. So you don't want the deluge of all your other email and messages and shit. You just want to have this be more limited and more streamlined, more like a single purpose device. Deconvergencizing it as a device. And because it's a restricted account or whatever, all sorts of bugs happen when you do this, when you try to do a transfer. Like, I don't have children, so this is the closest I'm ever going to have to a child, I guess, is this experience. And based on this experience, I'm kind of glad I don't have kids, because it sounds fucking terrible. Can't sign out of the iCloud account unless you basically unmake it a restricted account. So whenever Apple supports like, hey, you have to sign out and sign into iCloud, that's a relatively painless but annoying thing to do on one of these devices. But for this, you have to unset all of the restriction settings and just turn that off and turn off screen time entirely from another device. And then you got to like turn it on again after you signed out, and then you sign back in. And the issue that I was running into was that it was not using our iCloud family storage. And so over the course of a couple of years of just basic use, you hit that 5 gigabytes limit, probably in just screenshots. It's like not a lot of space. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, so I'm at this 5 gigabyte limit. Why is it not using the 12 fucking terabytes from the family? And I now know the answer, but the answer took me way too fucking long to figure out, which is the correct way to do this. It would have been apparent to me is like, if I wasn't getting all these like nastygram advertisements and alerts in the settings app, you click iCloud, you click the storage, and then you click manage storage. And it's like the most prominent thing about that storage is that there's one of those chevrons to the right, and you can go in and manage storage. But when you're at your limit, all you see visually really is like I think it's yellow text and a big circle and an exclamation point being like, you don't have enough storage. And so then the prominent call to action is another like blue link to upgrade storage. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I should have it, right? And I had to, after all of these hoops that I jumped through, I realized, and this is now I'm familiar with it as a known bug in family sharing. I opened settings. I turned off iCloud. I turned on iCloud. iCloud now says, welcome back to family sharing. So it's sharing the other subscriptions. You have to click above the call to action and above the obnoxious warning that you're running out of space and click on what just basically looks like text on a white round rect. And then that will take you into the manage iCloud storage page and it'll list off where your iCloud storage is going. And then if you scroll down there, then it'll give you the use family storage button. Like I don't know as a default. First of all, I don't know why you just turned off in the first place. Like it was using family storage as far as I knew. So I don't know why it unset itself. But I definitely don't know why by default a family member wouldn't just automatically be using the family storage. That's what it's getting paid for. That's why you join. I don't know, man. So everything is exhausting. Yeah. So when I talk about the every 7 years, all the cells in your body replace, and I'm kind of that way with hardware, as like all of the hardware in my life gets replaced on an annual cadence. That's all really, really, it's a great way to think of it. And it's working real well for me until you consider the amount of time that goes into not setting things up. In theory, setting things up is instantaneous. It's all automated. It's very easy. But in practice, these paper cuts and these bugs that I encounter every year, at least they turn into content. At least I'm getting something out of them. Apple Passwords is another thing that's, it's new. It's a new app with these releases. And I'm finally just deciding, even though it doesn't support everything I want, like most notably it doesn't have password history support, you can kind of see the writing on the wall. 1Password is getting more and more enterprisey. It's very electronic. It's not, a pleasant app to use. It's having more and more issues in terms of integrating with Safari well. Not impressed with the extension. It's just like performance has been bad. So I don't love it. And additionally, as Apple Intelligence becomes more and more prominent, the kind of hooks that they're adding for third parties through the Siri Intents API, intent, as in I have an intent to do this, Intents API, those hooks will be useful for certain types of applications and completely useless for many others. So if you're currently considering going back to Apple's stock applications for a lot of uses, like stock mail or stock reminders or stock notes, Apple Intelligence, I suspect, will be a much better experience for you over the next couple of years as they roll these features out with the stock apps. Now, maybe there will be a future 5 years from now where a lot of that capability is also spread out across third-party apps. But whenever right now Apple's talking about, and it has all the context of what you're doing on your phone, the asterisk there is it has all the context of what you're doing on your phone as long as you're using the first-party contacts app, the messages app, the notes app, the Apple Mail app, right? Like if you're in a third-party mail client, it's not going to see those. I guarantee it. And when it does, when that intent API actually rolls out, it'll be second class and it won't work really well. And also your apps won't update to use it properly forever. So it's a great time to go back to stock apps is the point. And so I'm deciding like, you know what? Apple Passwords migration, I'm going to try this. I have found a lot of bugs. It's painful. The UX is awkward. It feels not like a real Mac app in the same way that the settings app doesn't feel like a real Mac app. The UI controls, it's unclear when you're editing and not editing, it just looks identical. It looks like a web form. So the background colors aren't helpful. Stuff is weirdly right aligned or left aligned. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not super pleasant from a design perspective, but more critically, if you are looking at an individual item and you hit Command F, it does not go to the search bar. You have to first exit back to a list view, which probably makes some kind of sense because it's probably wired up as an iPhone app where there's no way to be in an item and also in the list view where the search bar is. So that But when you're in a Mac app and it's all just sidebar, like, you know, you got the sidebar and then you got the list view and then the thing on the right. When you have an item in your password vault selected, that Command F keyboard shortcut just does nothing. And you have to go mouse up to the search and then you can type in a search. Little things like that. These kinds of paper cuts are just nonsense. They'll get fixed, but right now, what I'm trying to do is transfer 2,000 fucking passwords, literally, manually, one at a time, because that's how they recommend you do it. And Ricky Mondello, they're a developer on this team, and they seem to do great work. They suggest moving just one thing at a time. You actually log into the service and then actually, add it to the Apple passwords. Because if you just do a raw export dump from one password, all of the kind of, old and outdated and defunct websites are going to get in there. All the cruft and crap of the past, things you won't have tested that the logins actually work with Apple passwords and so forth. And that's 100% valid. And so I'm trying to do it that way. But boy, howdy, it's taken for fucking ever. The other thing that is disappointing is that it's not an important part of a password manager is when you sign up for a new account or you sign in the first time, that password manager should suggest, hey, do you want to remember this password? And Apple Passwords doesn't do that successfully a whole lot of the time, especially if there's JavaScript involved. And so I found, okay, well, I logged into this thing and then it didn't didn't ask for to save the password. So now I've got to manually go and create the thing in the passwords app. It's a pain in the ass. I don't know why I'm doing it. I told you why I'm doing it. I don't know that it's worth it. Other follow-up, I registered a domain name called fuckthis.app, and I wrote a blog post about why I did that. I needed a place to put new little one-off apps that I build. Whether they're going to be free or for sale, or honestly, even just some of them will probably be private and just for my use. I wanted a domain name that I could dangle those off of as subdomains. So, receipts.fuckthis.app would be my first expense tracking, tool. And the idea here is we are very poorly served by the current crop of SaaS products, thanks to the, just nuclear wasteland of VC-backed startups over the last 15 years. And now nonsensical pump and dump AI and schemes, just like we saw a bunch of nonsensical pump and dump crypto schemes. There's not a lot of room for, serious companies to just build a normal fucking piece of software that works and that they charge money for. And so now that there's this Rails renaissance of people building more Rails apps, there are more independent developers, and that's what I've been striving to be and also to encourage other people to do. I think that it is a perfect time to start to take some small swings, some bites at the apple, and build little apps and sell those little apps and just have them be useful and have that be all she wrote and not have these grand ambitions of reaching network effect or taking over the world. So yeah, that's just going to be where I do that stuff. Whether I do that stuff, that's next year's Justin to figure out. But I wanted to at least plant a flag. So I wrote a blog post, much to this effect, that landed on the front page of Hacker News, which ruined my afternoon. But fortunately, it got flagged as not relevant, which unruined my afternoon. Got some funny comments though. Also, in follow-up, I've been talking about my camera, and I mentioned, hey, I might go out with my friend Eric to learn how to use the camera, and I did. I visited Eric at a studio. He showed me around, and he is, God, he puts so much thought and work into his workflow as an artist. He paints, the digital proofing that he does, the stencil printing system that he built, the how he treats the rooms for audio and video, the amount of robotics that he's bought and programmed to do, video movements of him doing the art or of the art, the lighting, I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for people who are willing to and driven to just go deeper and deeper and deeper down this pursuit of advancing their own skills for their own sake. That path of mastery around something. So getting to see that was really neat. The other thing that happens when you talk to somebody who has a lot of experience is very often, and this is where I've gotten kind of bad camera advice in the past. You talk to somebody with a lot of experience, and they very often have lost the beginner's mindset, and they've lost the ability to talk about, you know, how to do the thing as a beginner, or how to think about it. And last episode, I was telling you, I started off as wanting to use this thing in auto mode, but then I realized I couldn't do that and also control where the focus landed with a 2-stage shutter, because I wanted center dot focus. So I wind up in P mode, and then I start realizing the aperture and stuff needs adjustment, so I play with A mode. But I was terrified of M mode. Like M is in manual, like all fully manual. Now it's all on me. And the only thing that maybe is automated is white balance or something. That was always going to be too far, because I didn't want to have to spend a whole lot of time thinking before just taking a picture, because I thought that would result in me taking fewer pictures. Eric, when he was describing how he used his camera, I almost checked out mentally very early, because I could tell he was talking about stuff like reading the histogram and figuring out what to set the aperture and the shutter speed to. And everything he was saying was sort of contingent on being in manual mode. And then but he was so clear in his explanation, where I think the lack of the beginner's mindset, like sometimes, so one way to help a beginner is to know exactly where that beginner is in their journey, and then to lay down the next few breadcrumbs on the way to the, the house in the forest where the woman's going to bake them into candy or whatever, again, with the German fairy tales. You lay down just enough track in front of them for them to get to the next point. And that can be useful for what it is. And that's definitely how it usually works when somebody helps me. Maybe I'm blocked on something, on how to do a certain thing, and somebody unblocks me, and then I can make some more progress on my own at that point. But the way that Eric approached it was he would just talk about how he thinks about it. And this is another thing I have a tremendous amount of respect for. Clear thinkers. It's a simple phrase to say somebody, oh yeah, they think clearly, or they're a clear thinker about this, is one of the highest compliments I think you can give someone. Someone who has I don't have a lot of good language for this. Somebody who's like really, really just crystal clear, clarity of mind. I don't know. Like when they think about the thing, there is no superfluous anything. Maybe it's process, maybe it's vision for what they want, but like there is, you are getting, when they speak about this thing that they are thinking clearly about, you as the listener are getting pure rock cocaine. You are getting like just absolutely untainted, unadulterated, like truth bombs. And it can blow your skin off sometimes if you're not ready for it. But at the same time, even without that sort of beginner's mindset, even without that coaching mentality, who's going to mentor you up, sometimes when you talk to a clear thinker about something of which you have a bunch of, like I did, misconceptions or false ideas or fear around like how to get good at doing basic camera stuff or buying a fancy camera and with the intent of using it like a point and shoot. When Eric described how he actually used his camera and thought about using his camera in clear terms, I flipped on it was like a 5-minute conversation, and I opened my eyes and we're at Magic Kingdom in the theme park, and like he was like just making abundantly clear how to translate the thoughts that he has in his head as a professional photographer into something practicable that I could do on my camera. And I was doing it. It was just happening. All of the extra kind of like, mental model and explanation and all these over-torqued ways that you might hear or have people on the internet, like all of their advice be couched in like, well, for Canons, it would be this, and for Sony, it would be this, and all this extra cruft. or tying these fundamental concepts of like, well, now let me teach you about optics, and then they get into like the science, or like maybe let's get into the settings and talk about the settings. Like Eric is just like, there's basically three variables, and these are, I'm thinking about balancing these ones, and this is how I check that variable. I was like, oh, I'm used to balancing three variables and then checking that in real time for feedback as to whether I'm on or off the mark. And he gave me those cues and those variables and explained how to control them most efficiently. And then like all of a sudden by the end of that session, which wasn't very long, I was like, oh, I'm M as in manual now. I'm a manual. I'm an M man. Wonderful experience. So you can find him. His name's Eric Doggett at ericdoggett.com. He's a Disney fine artist. He also does has these really cute bird characters. His style is like very. I know he listens to this, and I don't want to fuck up how I describe it, but he does really great tiki art, and it's sort of got a mid-century modern era of coolness. Just go check it out. So I'll throw I'll throw a link into the show notes. But Eric Doggett, that's double G double T. Check it out. Yeah, that was there ended on a high note. So that was a good piece of feedback or follow up, and it was a lot of fun. Finally feeling like I'm at least on a path to figuring out how the fuck to take pictures. I'm less on a path to figuring out how Aaron Patterson's brain works when he sends me these fucking puns. I texted him that I could use a pun. I'm going to record a podcast tomorrow. Maybe something spooky. And he sent it. And so I by now you might know the drill. He sends puns. I read the pun. I groan vociferously. Is that a word? Sounds like a word. Sounds like it's either a word or a kind of tree. I groan to some extent, and then I read it again, and then I write it down and I rank it, and now I got to rank this up against 22 other puns. Let's try this out. Oh, cool. For the first time, I am in iMessage. I am looking at the pun. I'm hovering. Nothing is happening. Whisking your mouse, maybe this is a macOS change. Whisking your mouse over, just hovering on the invisible ink, no longer is doing it. I have to actually hold the mouse down to clear. Oh, well, all right. So for context, before I read this, I did text him that I was going to do a podcast the next day. The day prior, I said, hey, I think I might need a pun. So this was me reminding him, basically. And he said, shit, thanks for the reminder. I'll give you one later. So with that context in mind, Justin kept asking me to make a Halloween-based pun. I guess he was afraid I might ghost him. I feel like this is now a private conversation that I feel violated. Justin kept asking me to make a Halloween-based pun. I guess he was afraid I might ghost him. Thank you, Aaron, for your contribution to society. Oh my God, copying this is not going to go well. I right-clicked it and now it's just like invisible entirely. Okay, got it. I got the text, everybody. Where the hell is this going to go? Not that high is my first reaction. It is below for sure. It is below. I heard camera stores are always having a flash sale, which is all the way down at 13, which feels kind of like a crime. Last week or last episode, you might remember that we have a new number one. Did you know the ancient Aztec were really into Halloween? Apparently, they were famous for their corn maze. M-A-I-Z-E. Which I guess just really means corn. All right, I'm going to say this is worse than the 16th ranked as well. I recently traveled to Toronto for work. I refuse to take a red eye, though, because I feel they are a fly-by-night operation. It's good, though. I'm going to say that this is just barely better than when Apple product engineers ask their developers for estimates, do you think they iPad their deadlines? So that would make this the new 17th ranked pun of season 1 of Breaking Change. I don't know what a season is here in this context. Maybe seasons of this program will map to the year. I guess we're going to find out. But I don't know if this list can just go on forever without some grouping strategy, because it's only going to make less sense the further we go. All right, so that's the pun. Aaron, thank you for your contribution. I hope everyone has a safe and happy Halloween. I heard someone referring to Mischief Night, or like an ad referring to Mischief. Yes, it was an ad for some alarm company, like a home monitoring alarm service. And they were saying, hey, part of the ad copy apparently was like, hey, if you're worried about Mischief Night. And I don't know anyone who knows what Mischief Night is, because I don't think anyone fucking calls it Mischief Night. I think what they call it, and this is one of those great examples of different language in different regions of the US. I know what they called it when I was a kid growing up in Metro Detroit. It was Devil's Night. And it was like a uniquely Detroit thing, the 80s, 90s, whatever. Like October 30th was like, October 31st, it's trick or treat. You got your tricks, you got your treats, and then you have the autonomy to decide whether you want to give treats or receive tricks. Devil's Night, all tricks, no treats. We're just gonna start fires and spray paint your shit. So lock up your home, stay inside. That's Devil's Night. That's October 30th, and I'm recording now on Devil's Day. Happy Devil's Afternoon to you. Mischief Night, not a fucking thing. Not as far as I know. And certainly, like, if you're a marketing person who's trying to sell, like, at-home set up, internet connected burglar alarm monitoring services, you wanna crank the fear dial up, right? Mischief Night. Are you just like afraid you're gonna get canceled by like Church of Satan people for misappropriating the devil this way? Like, is that why you said Mischief Night? It was Simply Safe. Simply Safe? I'll take your money and I'll scrub all this. Simply Safe. Promo code Devil's Night for free shipping. Yeah, it seems like marketing malpractice. You should be calling it Devil's Night. And then you should be making people afraid, right? Oh, God. Crime rates are down versus 2020. I'm sure that's even though half the country is vociferously, failing to believe that statistic. Crime rate is actually way down, and it's probably a hard time to sell, burglary monitoring systems. You need every arrow in the quiver that you can to sell these things. Scare us. Tell me what's going to happen to my wife or whatever if I don't buy your goddamn stupid product. Tell me what's going to get vandalized. It's Devil's Night. Anyway, that's all I got. So the reason that I'm recording today on Mischief Day is Wednesday, October 30th, marks the conclusion of a 3-day-long ceremony of Apple announcing new Macintosh computers. Man, when was the last time they even used the word Macintosh? A whole array of new Macs. I don't like saying Macs, plural, on a podcast, because they also use the word Macs as in maximum all over the place when they're describing their chips. So I'm going to do my best here to describe what the fuck they announced. I know it's dicey. Last year they did a special Halloween episode. Kind of felt like a 30-minute sort of, spooky, scary jokey video, and they unveiled all of the that was just a few products. That was 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros as we know them with the Pro and Max chips, but also taking the 14-inch chassis and basic industrial design and putting in a basic M3. Did I say M4 then? Those were M3 Pro and Max. And also just a basic M3 model that has the fan, has a 14-inch form factor. So that way there's a little bit more differentiation in terms of features between that and the M3 MacBook Air. That was also yet unannounced. Now that event, like apart from the spooky, scary stuff, I feel didn't give enough breathing room to. That's a lot to unveil 3 new chips in one day. That was the here's the M3, here's the M3 Pro, and here's the M3 Max. And in 30 minutes, it means that they start with the base model. It's always good, better, best. They tell you why the M3 is so amazing over the M. They're comparing to 2 generations ago, the M1. And now here's why the M3 Pro is better than the M1 Pro, and here's why the M3 Max is better than the M1 Max. And unless, it's not like they're sharing a lot of useful numbers. It's just like a lot of line charts and no numbers on the axes. It's a little overwhelming, and you can kind of miss the story, right? Like none of these, like the M4 Pro doesn't get time to shine in terms of what are the features that actually make it stand out when it's sandwiched between these other 2 chips. This year, I think what they did was pretty brilliant because they took their time. Instead of doing one big event video, they did several little videos. So there's starting on Monday, they did an M4 iMac. So it just comes with the M4 chip. So that meant that the iMac, which now has the USB-C accessories instead of Lightning, the trackpad and the mouse still port on the bottom, which I support the port on the bottom because it makes people angry, and the keyboard. They also added it can drive an 8K display now using the new M4 chip. So in addition to the iMac, you can have an external display that's up to 8K and 60 frames a second, which is cool. What was the other thing? Oh, you can get a matte finish like on the studio display. So you can get special, anti-glare coating, or not coating, but whatever they do with lasers. Then on Tuesday, they did the new redesigned, really the 3rd major industrial design update for the Mac Mini. And as I predicted, it literally looks like somebody took a Mac Studio and just dropped it down. In fact, they had to kind of put John Turnus's head right next to it, so it didn't just look like a Mac Studio. Because if you have it floating in space, it sort of looks like a squished Mac Studio. And the best way, now that everything's on USB-C, the best way to actually look at a product shot and know how big it is to look at the size of the USB-C port. It's got 2 on the front. So you can tell it's small, but it's also taller than the previous one. So volumetrically, it's not actually that big of a shrink. And then the new Mac Mini, comes in the M4, but also the M4 Pro. So they were able to use this to do that reveal. And make the M4 Pro kind of have its moment to shine for a new cycle. And then today, of course, MacBook Pro Day. And so we get the same base 14 plus real 14 plus real 16. And the real 14 and 16 can come in Pro and Max configurations. M4 Pro and M4 Max. So they're now talking about the M4 Max, and here's why that's so great. So better reveal overall. I think that was a smart way to do it. And they win more news cycles that way. And the tech press, and probably more of this is going to seep into people's brains as to differentiating between the Max and the Pro. But anyway, it's good marketing. Keep us on our toes. All of these chips are faster than the old chips. I don't know what I want to say about it. It looks like similar to last year, the M4 Max is a independently designed chip, not just in the first 2, M1 and M2, it was like the Max, and then the Pro was just the Max, but with some stuff cut off. These look like they're very different chips. The Maxes are like basically using the entire resolution of the lithography machine that they have to print these things. So they're just really, really huge dies. So they're basically about as big as you can get. One presumes this year there will be an M4 Ultra. Supermax came to mind for some reason, because I live in a prison of my own design as I watch this shit, knowing I don't want to buy any of it, but I'm still slightly envious. So I presume there's going to be an M4 Ultra, and that's going to go into the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro. We'll see if there's ever an M something extreme for that would be exclusive to the Mac Pro. But you can sort of see like where they've been working to for a while, where it's like if you want an iMac or a MacBook Air, the most base level, you're just going to get the base chip. If you have a Mac Mini, you can choose between base chip or Pro. If you've got a MacBook Pro, like a real MacBook Pro, or a Mac Studio, then you can choose between Pro and Max. Although, wait, no, I guess that's not true, right? In fact, the Studio would start with Max. Interesting. Yeah, so each product, basically, it's like, if you get a CPU choice at all, you get between the good one and the one that would be better and more expensive. And then, Studio gets Max and Ultra, and then the Pro just gets Ultra. I think that's how it works. No one fucking buys the Pro, so it doesn't matter. Let's see. The Pro chip, I don't know, 10 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, 20 core GPU. Memory bandwidth is even higher than last year, and last year's was kind of nuts, so that's great. Thunderbolt 5 support finally. So it's 120 gigabits in one direction and like 40 in the other. So that's how you're driving these 8K displays. Also, of course, just faster performance generally. So I saw some products last month that were touting Thunderbolt 5, and I was like, oh, Apple hasn't done any of that yet. So that's something in the Pro and Max configurations. I think the base M4 just has I think that's still just Thunderbolt 4. I'm not sure for sure. What else is interesting here? There was a product manager in one of these videos, I think the iMac one, a fella whose name is Sree, S-R-E-E, and they had him on camera. Having these smaller videos was a great opportunity to have them give some reps to people in the organization who are probably in middle management to be in these videos, feature them. I'm sure it feels awesome to get to be in one of these. A woman named Allegra was introduced in, I think, probably all 3, but definitely the first 2 videos as the product manager for Apple Intelligence. And that's probably a really fun job because you probably have a hall pass to just like fucking bust skulls and be a one-man wrecking crew through the entire org chart, because now that everything has to be Apple Intelligence, you kind of get your way. So I hope that being Allegra is fun. But yeah, his name was Sree. I was like, man, like, I was like, I should have listened to what he was saying because that would have been more respectful. But instead, I was like, I just imagined a world where he literally decided, like in whenever the 4S came out and we were all introduced to Siri, if he just imagined, I'm going to join this company because, and I'm going to find a way to reclaim my name and my identity because my name is Sree, and every time anyone says hey to me, my life gets worse. That would be a bummer. Just like I'm sure there are real humans named Alexa. I would not envy them. So that's a wrap on hardware this year for Apple stuff. I think overall it was a pretty good year. The new iPad is bananas. That's a thing that people say, I guess, when they don't want to use potentially ableist language. I would probably pick a different fruit. I would say kumquat. That's kumquat. No, try that on. It doesn't work so well. I feel like Groundhog's Day though, because every year I think you've got the 13 and 15 inch MacBook Air, you got the 14 and 16 inch MacBook Pro, 12, 14, 16 just goes together so well. You got this Vision Pro product that really works best as just a display for a MacBook. Give me that 12 inch MacBook Pro. And so I was hoping beyond hope that maybe we'd somehow see it. I knew we wouldn't, and then we didn't. So I saw my shadow, and it's another 12 months of winter. So that's why I'm kind of sad, because I want a faster computer. I want a better computer, but I also want it to weigh less than my MacBook Air. That's all I want. That's all I want out there. That and those other several things that I've already mentioned wanting. Yeah, we'll see if that ever happens. I'm not holding my breath. Speaking of Apple, they're also in the news. They're doing an Oregon Trail movie. Oregon Trail. I played that as a kid in school. There were many iterations of Oregon Trail. The Gaming Historian, if you search YouTube, the history of the Oregon Trail is really fun. How it came about, the original makers of it were in different jobs, and the connection to education right off the gate was really fun. It's an interesting story about how that game came to be. But Apple is now, funding, greenlit a movie that's based on Oregon Trail. I don't know whether I should be saying Oregon Trail. I think that's how most people said it. But when I think of Portland, Oregon, I think Oregon. The idea, so it's going to be like a comedy. It's got 2 EGOT winners involved, so it's going to probably have some music in it. I don't know. I don't know anything about these people. All I know is that when I close my eyes and I imagine an Oregon Trail movie, it's probably going to look like Jumanji, right? With a diverse cast of 4 leads who are in a Conestoga wagon together, and The Rock is at least one of them. And Kevin Hart might be another one, right? And Emily Blunt might be another one. I think this is probably where we're landing. If The Rock ends up not being in this production, I think it'll be a missed opportunity for printing money. But then again, he's kind of overplayed at this point in terms of he's done this movie now several times with the. I wonder if Jungle Cruise did well from Disney's perspective. I wonder if they consider that a success or not. Well, certainly better than Haunted Mansion and most of the stupid shit that they've released lately. Let's see. In GitHub related news, full disclosure, I've got friends at GitHub. And I've got friends who were at GitHub. But I love the friends that are at GitHub, and I love a lot of what GitHub's doing. I think that GitHub has done a fantastic job retaining their brand, scaling as an organization, pivoting into being something much more than a repository, place, and a kind of lightweight project management system. And has evolved into the leading edge of what it means to be fucking cool as a developer with respect to AI. Of course, if you're really, really into AI productivity tools, GitHub Copilot already looks a little bit passé because the product has been evolving on the UX front more than the intelligence side. So sharing an article, The Verge's little kind of high level summary of yesterday at GitHub Universe, which is the sponsored conference that they do in San Francisco every year. GitHub announced a whole bunch of improvements to GitHub Copilot, including the ability to choose between multiple models, including expensive models like O1 Preview. They never published publicly what OpenAI model was being used before, but this is hey, we were going to be adding Gemini, we're going to be adding Anthropic. It's going to be multi-model, and you'll be able to choose. Now, of course, there will probably be different associated costs with those different model choices. But that's really interesting, in my opinion. That has been the thing holding back Copilot in a lot of ways, is that the inability to choose a model. And I think when you're using a code assistant, even if it's just in spicy autocomplete mode, every time you type something, a request is going to a server and some context is getting written up into a ChatGPT API, and you're getting responses back, and those are really expensive API calls. And so I've always wondered, how much does it cost to actually run ChatGPT, or to run Copilot versus running ChatGPT or something, where I think from a usage perspective, every keystroke of every programmer every day just keeps ringing up the bill. So that made me think that they probably are using one of the older and cheaper models. So to hear that you could use O1 Preview in the context of Copilot, how slow would that be? How expensive would that be? Are those costs passed on to users somehow? So it seems, I'm very curious to see where that lands. But it's good to know that they're pushing the ball forward on that front, because I think the where they're unique is going to be is not in having the best model. There's not going to be a moat around models, as we've often heard. It's going to be the best, most integrated user experience. And for integrated developer user experiences, I think Microsoft and GitHub have, that is, when you look at a merger and acquisition, you're like, what would make them a great pair? What would make them stronger together? It all depends on what you choose to emphasize. And if you emphasize the thing that they both excel at, but maybe have blind spots, like that developer productivity in an integrated way where like it's a one-stop shop and everything is right where you need it, is emerging as like VS Code plus GitHub. So that's interesting to see. They also announced a tool called Spark, synopsis in the same article I'll share on the show notes. Basically, Spark will generate if you're a beginner, generate a web app for you based on prompts. And if you're a developer, it'll kind of add some more customizability as you go through. I didn't watch the demo. I assume there is a demo, but this is the promised land, right? Where we knew this was going to be the end game ultimately. And so far we've just seen little like some real and some fake, like this Devon thing from earlier this year or last year. I'm still optimistically skeptical. I don't want it to ever get to the point where you can build high quality, awesome fucking software with just a magical incantation of a few sentences. But I'm also not afraid of that ever happening, because to build software is an act of communication, and that communication is like having hundreds and hundreds of structured interviews, usually between people and then with computers, but it could also just be between computers and people as it is. And so like it might be able to speed that feedback loop up, but I'm not at all convinced that a computer will just be able to use inferences and guess based on very, very short amounts of text input, how to build a whole fucking app. It's gonna take more than that. And so like these demos might be really good for coming up with good structure and naming and creating little boxes to put code in, or building like kind of like little, structural frameworks and patterns to follow. And those are areas where programmers and teams tend to undervalue and do a bad job at. So I'll be interested to see the direction that takes. Cool that they're working on it. I'm going to skip the potential conversation of the current job market for programmers right now. But if you're still an AI pessimist or skeptic and you're struggling to find a job as a programmer, you might want to rethink strategies. Another news article that jumped out at me is saw this headline on Gizmodo. Redditors are trying to poison Google's AI to keep tourists out of the good restaurants. And I was like, whoa, okay. So like Google signed this agreement with Reddit where they can train their AI on Reddit, and they have a more prominent linking from Google. And the reason that everyone expects that they did this was that Google doesn't have any of its own organic source of, if Google was Yahoo and Yahoo Answers was still big, Yahoo would be using Yahoo Answers to improve Yahoo search. Google has YouTube, and they use YouTube analytics and like the transcripts and stuff to improve Google search. But they don't necessarily own that same sort of like just treasure trove of user generated content to train on. And of course, like everyone, they're training on a bunch of stuff, but like I think as a competitive advantage, they sign up for an exclusive agreement with Reddit, pay Reddit some token amount of money, and then box out. Now, so if I'm using ChatGPT Plus and I say, hey, go check this Reddit thread, it won't even follow the link. It's scared because, robots.tech says for it to not go there or whatever. So when you search for like, what's the best restaurant in city name, now the new Gemini AI summary will often just say the name of a specific restaurant based on what Reddit said. Totally believable. Now, when I saw this headline that like Redditors are trying to poison Google's AI, I was like, it's probably a city with a lot of people and very few good restaurants. And then I said, in my brain, as I'm clicking it before the page is loaded, I'm like, I bet it's London. And so I was very happy to see that it was indeed London, which, having only been to London once for like a week, I went to maybe 10 days. I went to 3 good restaurants And then I have heard those 3 good restaurants. Good, they were all recommendations from friends. I have heard them referenced dozens of times since then, because they are apparently 3 of 10 good restaurants in all of bloody England. So I could see why the Redditors on our London would get mad when they actually do finally find a good place and it's relatively underground and not everyone knows about it. But then like when Google starts surfacing it as the best thing, there's a person who's complaining about this like queue of 200 people for a sandwich at this like market, and they can't handle that kind of traffic. So now, the Redditors are trying to talk up a bunch of really bad or mediocre places as sort of chaff to confuse Google's Gemini so that it learns the wrong lesson and starts redirecting some of the traffic to other places. And it sort of reframes that whole meme of, well, if you're people who are in the know, if you know about how to get good Google results is to search your thing and then type Reddit at the end of the query and just see what Reddit says. Now that it's like you plug the sewer line back into the the water input, and now we've just created this sort of closed loop system where Reddit is feeding back into the top of the Google results. So that means like normie people are going to search what's the best restaurant. Then they're going to get answers from Reddit, which is highly curated, and people who care too much about the thing. So my guess is that even the normie people who do end up at what is really a great restaurant, if you know jack shit about good food or good restaurants, those normie people are still likely to be disappointed, because when they say that, what they want to see is Chili's, right? They want to see mainstream offerings that have like modern amenities, like tap to pay and big cushy seating and whatever it is, like just norm core dining experiences. This seems like it's going to end poorly. And when we've already seen what happens with TikTok and Instagram Reels and how they just keep ruining different parts of the world as like, oh, well, can't go here anymore because there's been a TikTok, and now, now that place sucks because it's always overrun. The old Yogi Berra-ism of, nobody goes there anymore. It's too busy. It's too crowded. Now, if that's not just people on TikTok and YouTube TikTok, I guess, and YouTube and Instagram algorithms seeing those things and then crowding them. Now, if it's literally like you get a paragraph at the top of Google just declaratively stating like, this place is the best place for this as a fact, and then they close their browser and they click 0 links and they look around, that seems even worse. So that seems like it'll probably accelerate that trend. So that's kind of neat. Yeah, the whole Reddit trick was only good because it was secret. And Google just can't fucking figure anything out, seems like. One last news item over at The Verge. Not really news. They had a little quick post. It's kind of like a tweet. It's kind of like the takes from my website. Somebody who's an internet person on the platform previously known as Twitter was complaining that he wanted to trade in his Tesla Model S Plaid, which he paid $140,000 for just merely 2 years ago. And Tesla offered only $46,000 for it, representing a $94,450 decrease in value over 24 months. On top of that, he claims the Model S is falling apart, which we should maybe take as a separate issue. And a car that's falling apart is certainly worth less. But that aside, this is a great example, in my opinion, of people misunderstanding what electric vehicles are. Like, electric vehicles and the way that Tesla broke through was by starting at the top because it had to, because like everything about this was super fucking expensive. So making them like a luxury sports car with the Tesla Roadster, that was a necessity, right? It's going to be well over $100,000. Just that's because it's how much it costs. So we'll pad it with some extra luxury features and some branding, and that's how we'll make any kind of margin at any point, right? But the car itself, like, and this is the not so secret of EVs if you think for 5 minutes, is like every electric motor is kind of the same and has basic instantaneous torque, right? Like, and we're really just dealing with batteries, motors that you really can't differentiate one engine from another, not easily. Just scale linearly. And then like what kind of tablet you have inside, right? And like what's the computer like? And beyond that is a golf cart. So that's what it means to be an EV. And so all of the stuff that would make an Aston Martin or a Rolls Royce or a Porsche, all the engineering of like the countless little parts, right, here and there. It's like the number of parts in cars are going way in EVs is already down, but like it's getting even smaller as they go to like 3D printing, basically entire halves of the vehicle. What you are buying is not like, so if you buy a Tesla Model S for $150,000, it's not like you bought a fancy Porsche 20 years ago for $140,000 that you expect to retain some value, right? And maybe even go up in value if the model after that isn't so popular, right? That's not what we're talking about, because it's not about this engine. It's not, I think that the best analogy for driving home this point would be watches. You know, like some number of people bought the gold, 24 karat gold, $18,000 Apple Watch that they only ever made for that first generation. Now, if you did that, the only winning move, and you've already lost, but the only winning move from there is to never open the box. You put that fucker in an argon case and you just leave it there for 50 years plus, and then you sell it for probably ultimately less money than you'd make if you took the $18,000 and put it in the market, which is why it's a stupid idea. If you opened that watch and you put it on, it would only be 2 years before the Apple Watch Series 3 not only completely pantsed it on performance, had cellular, the gold watch was never going to get that retrofitted. It was going to be, just a couple years after that where the screens are bigger, it's lighter, it's, like always on display with like Series 5, right? You're never going to have an always on display on your $18,000 gold watch. And after a certain point now, you can't update the software on those original watches, right? And after a certain point beyond that, that means like the internet stops working because SSL certificates are outdated, right? So it's a vintage thing. It's basically you just have a brick, right? You've got a very fancy brick that looks kind of like a watch. It's got the same form factor as a traditional, manual timepiece made in Switzerland. It serves the same, it can serve the same basic function, right? Of being a thing you look at and knowing what time it is. It is analogous to thinking about an EV as being like, yes, it is a car. It gets me from A to B. I push the pedal and it goes. Now, of course, EVs can be all this extra stuff too, whether you're talking about autonomy and they drive themselves, whether you're talking about the simplicity and straightforward nature of what is required to actually deliver one of these, and the opportunities for optimization in terms of reduction of the number of parts, for example, or the different materials engineering that can go into it, because you're dealing with like, internal combustion engines are sort of like magical because we're basically just firing guns, many, many times a second and having all these managed explosions happen to make things go forward. Everything about EVs is a lot simpler. And that simplicity lends itself to like great performance characteristics, great user experience when you do these things right. But it just makes it yet another tech product where the Galaxy Brain thing to do is what I do with everything else, is just like either buy at a really low price such that you won't feel bad when the depreciation occurs dramatically. So get the entry-level model of the latest model year, right? Which is usually the best advice for any sort of tech product category you don't otherwise care about. Or you get the best one and you just price in that you're going to keep trading it in every year or 2 years, or like on a lease model. Like those two things make sense. But the idea that you buy the expensive one and then you expect it to appreciate or hold its value when the computer in the trunk is like never going to get a better GPU and it's never going to run the latest software after a certain point, that is foolishness. So don't be like Kyle. Or if you're like Kyle Connor, this fella, don't be surprised. And that is yeah, I'm checking the news well now and it's runneth dry, so let's move on. Found a new game to play. It's called Star Trucker. I think I mentioned this last time around. Star Trucker, if I didn't mention it, you're driving an 18-wheeler, but you're in space. And you truck. You pick up cargo, you drop off the cargo, but you're in space. And it is what is becoming a subgenre of, I don't want to call them streamer games, but like games that I don't know if a bunch of people are streaming this game, but it seems designed to create, they're like a sandbox game where like between the physics and sort of the hilarity of the scenario, you could see streamers kind of turning this into content by just doing silly things. I don't like thinking of this as a genre because like that's a kind of performance art that might be facilitated by a certain type of game. But when games like Goat Simulator or whatever are kind of designed to be that, Octodad might have been the first one, then it's not actually fun to play. And all of its sales are attributed to, oh, my streamer played this. This game is an actual game. And you drive a truck and you're in space and you pick up contracts. And like, I will say that like, yes, the complexity of running your rig, you have all these different, like a dozen different systems on board and they all have to remain charged and they're all draining separate batteries. And you got to go and literally get your ass out of the chair and walk around your spaceship and plug in. For example, you got to plug in a new battery. For example, I ran out of battery. I had an idiot like light blinking at me on my dashboard, and I ran out of battery in my gravity generator. And so then everything starts floating. All the shit that had been like carefully organized around the cab starts flying in space. So then you have to get out of the chair, and now I'm floating too as if I'm doing an EVA. I'm out in space. So I got to float through the cabin, and then I have to open up the stairwell, and under the stairwell is where the battery goes to re-enable the gravity. Of course, opening the stairwell also acts as like a spring load that throws a whole bunch of boxes in the air. Anything resting on it just flings out there. I find a battery, I grab the battery, I replace the battery, and then boom, gravity. Of course, all my shit is still everywhere. Or when I say complexity, it's like, it should be as simple as you pick up cargo and then you drive to a place and then you drop off the cargo. In most games like Euro Truck Simulator, the hard part is, or Elite Dangerous, which is also kind of a space trucking game, or at least can be played that way. Most games like this, the reason that I think they're popular with people like me is I can do a little bit of work in terms of deciding like on a strategy, and then execute that strategy relatively mindlessly. I'll have to pay attention when I undock at a space station, but when I'm flying and I'm charting courses, it's kind of like on autopilot. I can listen to a podcast, I can watch a show, and then of course it's hard again when I'm docking at a space station. So that's what my expectation was going into this game, that would be that kind of rhythm. And the problem is that like I never get to relax because there's always shit going on. So I think that I'm talking myself now into why I think I'm going to fall off this game pretty quick. Instead, it's just like there's always just something going wrong. And sometimes those things are going wrong because they just go wrong on a timer, like that gravity battery, and you just have to fix it. Other times they go wrong because I ran into something. Like there are lanes similar to highways, and if you stay in those lanes, they tend to be clear of space debris. But sometimes the most direct route, you would skip those and you just fly in space in a direct line. And now you're going through all this space junk and these asteroids. And when that happens, if you're looking, you can dodge them. But if you're not looking closely, and one of those asteroids, even the little guy, if it hits your hull, which is the name of the chassis of your what looks to be like a truck with little steam, it's hilarious. if your truck gets hit by an asteroid, then it's going to start venting oxygen. And you'll have a little beeper go off, and you got to actually go outside, go to the airlock. Well, first you got to put on your EV suit, then you got to go to the airlock, and then you got to open the airlock on the other side, do the EVA. You go and you find the hole. You patch the part of your hull, and you go back on the ship. So I thought that I was used to this, right? I thought I was familiar with that as being, okay, so this is the game loop. All right, so you run into stuff, and then it punishes you when you run into stuff, and you learn the lesson not to run into stuff. But it still happens from time to time, and so it happened again, and I went out to do the EVA, and I forgot that the way physics work. So like, if you accelerate a starship, you're just going at that velocity, right? And you have to actively decelerate because you don't have air resistance like we do here on Earth. Or against the ground, you'd have resistance. That drag would slow you down to a stop so long as you're not holding down an accelerator. But if you're in space and you accelerated, you got to decelerate. I wasn't thinking like that, so I started my EVA. I opened the airlock and immediately got sucked out of there, and watched my truck just driving in a straight line without me, with me having absolutely no hope of ever getting it again. And then I was just there. And there wasn't like a fail state. It didn't say like mission failed. I was just a dude in space. And I think I got bored after a certain point. I assume I could have chosen to just stay there until my EV suit ran out of power or oxygen or both, and I died. But instead I just restarted from the last save. So that's when you're making a little occupational simulator game like that, even if it's a parody, it seems to me that you have to identify, who is my target audience for this? Is this somebody who wants to chill out and play some music or a podcast while they do this sort of repetitive task and maybe like rack up money or experience? Or is this game for somebody who is a, like I think something like SimCity or that's maybe not the best example. Something where you kind of have to frenetically, or maybe a real-time action game like StarCraft, right? Where you have to like really think about queuing up all of your actions in the right order, and there's like a time pressure to do so. This is more the latter, even though most of the things it is a parody of are the former, where those are mostly just chill out and have a good time games, as opposed to really, really keep you on the edge of your seat, so to speak. One of the other things I really liked about the game is that when you sign up to like do a new deal, you go to a pickup. Lesser games would just have you say like, hit the A button to accept this contract, right? And you wouldn't even think about it as a contract. This one, like you go to start a contract, and like it literally shows terms and conditions, and like it's all the legalese you'd expect from a space trucker having to sign up for something. You got to scroll to the bottom. So the simulation, I think, might take things a little bit too far, but I appreciated it. So I fell off after a couple days of that. I'm also separately, and what I'm trying to get through now, but I don't know if I've got the stamina anymore. The latest Call of Duty game just came out, and it is available to Game Pass subscribers. And I am a Game Pass subscriber, and I haven't played a Call of Duty game, a campaign at launch, for 10 plus years. Advanced Warfare might be the last one I did, and that was the one with Kevin Spacey, and we don't talk about him anymore. And I always liked the campaigns because Call of Duty has a massive budget, and so the production values are out of this world. And it's, they're fun, tight-knit stories. They're usually not very long. The missions are really like, a lot of work goes into them, even if they're pretty linear, even if it's mostly just hallway shooters and you're kind of just going from A to B, whatever. Like you see an interesting story. The graphics are really good. You get a campaign first-person shooter experience that is evocative of GoldenEye in a world where everything is as simple as then. You point at the bad guys, you pull the trigger, gun goes pop, pop. The controller rumbles at the right times. It's nice, simple, uncomplicated murder. And Call of Duty Black Ops 6 And because Black Ops is too long, people often call it blops. I don't know if they call it blops, but they write it out as blops. And so I'm playing that. The campaign is so tight, I can't be separately consuming some other kind of media simultaneously, which is fine. I mean, that's actually good. It means that the game is engaging. The multiplayer and Call of Duty multiplayer always sort of just exists on a different plane of reality than the campaign. It's like, the world operates under different rules there. And people who are really into it are really fucking into it. Fortunately, though, enough people are playing that if you're really bad at it, they'll find other dummies who are also really bad at it. And so I'm so bad, though, that at least with the control, here's the thing, is I like to play shooter games, all games, on a controller, on a couch, in a relaxed position without thinking too hard about it, which is not how you want to play a competitive first-person shooter, and not if you want to win. And I used to, in high school and some of college, play Unreal Tournament and all of its sequels really competitively with a mouse and a keyboard, leaning forward and dialed in and drinking my Mountain Dew Code Red and listening to my Daft Punk. And I loved it. And I was actually really, relative to this, I was really fucking good. I was pretty good at Counter-Strike and those kinds of games. But here, what I want to have is a game where I can just play with a controller and be kind of bad at it and still have an okay time. And I'm just right on the bubble of not quite good enough to get to that point. But I'll give it another couple nights. Again, the only reason I'm playing it is it's free or included in the subscription. I should probably move on to a game I actually want to play, or one where I have some edifying benefit. For example, want to get back into the Yakuza games, edifying, organized crime. The reason being that if I play them in Japanese and I'm reading the Japanese, at least then I learn some, admittedly crass, but I learn some vocabulary. Let's see. Oh, well, hey, look, I don't have any other recommendations. I have one here, but then I realized I talked about it already. So that's going away. And that means if you've got recommendations, you should email them. Podcast@searls.co. Tell me what to watch or play. You've heard it. If you've been listening for very many of these episodes, you know that I have eclectic tastes in games and movies and TV. Just whatever you're liking and why. And I'll talk about that in
You've Got Mail.
the mailbag. Eric. Same Eric as earlier. Sorry to have outed you, Eric. Eric also lives very close to Disney World, like me. He wrote in to ask, living close to Walt Disney World, have you grown fond of any particular parks, rides, or experiences since you moved there that you wouldn't have even thought about several years ago? This is a really good question. I'm sure he's given this a lot of thought too, because he moved in from out of state. First of all, if you live here long enough and you follow theme parks really closely, we do not call them rides. We call them attractions, which I don't love. Anytime you have to adopt jargon that is more syllables than the colloquial word, I think you can go to hell. That's what I have to say. So I say rides. All right, so we live right next to the 4 Disney parks. Those are Magic Kingdom, Disney's Hollywood Studios, formerly known as MGM Studios, Animal Kingdom, and Epcot. And Epcot, okay, so another thing you do when you move here is you got to start spelling Epcot in all caps or people get mad. When you are visiting theme park land, like every couple of years or every now and then, it's always about rides for me. It's like I want to just ride all the things. I want to do all of the big attractions, just boom, 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 boom. Becky and I would get there at open. We would do all the things straight up, and we'd hit the restaurants too, and we'd eat. But we'd be there until the park closed, doing absolutely everything we could. We were younger then, and everything was new to us. But that's not just Disney. Universal parks are nearby. We got 2 of those, soon to be 3 of those, with Epic Universe opening next spring. In theory, we have SeaWorld, but and living here for 4 years, I assumed I'd go to SeaWorld at some point, and it hasn't happened yet. It will happen to me when the time is right. We also have Legoland, which is now a buttressed with a Peppa Pig land, and that's only really maybe a bit more than an hour west of me. So it's a lot of theme parks to choose from, but just thinking of just the Disney ones in particular, because I am there, I'm at all of them quite a lot. Again, reminder, if you're ever in town, hit me up. You know how to email me. Get in this mailbag, or don't, and just privately email me, and maybe we can meet up. I think I have come to like, whether I like Epcot more, I don't know, but people who live in theme park half of Orlando kind of use Epcot like a glorified food court, which is weird and is definitely a different vibe than using it as a theme park. But as they have shut down so many attractions to either refurbish them or let them languish and not refurbish them, or realize that alcohol makes them a whole lot of fucking money and really lean into all the festivals and the debauchery, I think that the balance of power in what the fuck Epcot is, maybe it started as Prototype City of Tomorrow in the planning phases, but then it became traditional theme park with some cute, the World Showcase of these different national pavilions. And now it's like those World Showcase pavilions are the eternal fire that engine of food and beverage revenue that drives everything else, because they all have restaurants and they've got like little food stands at the festivals. So there's just like a lot of dining opportunities, activations for us there at Epcot. And then you can walk out the back of Epcot to 5 different resort hotels now, with like Boardwalk, Yacht Club, Beach Club, Dolphin, Swan, and then the new Marriott Reserve Hotel just beyond. Like, it's a lot of restaurants and bars in a very tight geography, all very easily walkable. So going to Epcot to get dinner could mean any of like 36 fucking things. And it could mean you're spending $10 on fish and chips or $250 for a really high-end kaiseki dinner at Takumite. The gamut is very wide. So I would say Epcot, I go there a lot more, but it's more functional. And I do love it. Like, hey, the floor of quality is higher there than it would be if I was just, in a random strip mall. The ceiling is limited by the operational reality of you're in a theme park and the fact that it's like, you're generally a captive audience. But that's good. So other than to dwell on Epcot, if you just want to ride some fucking rides, Disney Hollywood Studios is probably the best bet for your dollar or hour. You got Rock and Roller Coaster, you got Tower Terror right at the edge. So it's like boom, boom. Then you come back. The Mickey and Minnie Runaway Railway ride is a family ride, but it's very fun. And the artwork is awesome. I love that art design of the new Mickey, which how do they hire the Ren and Stimpy guy to reinvent Mickey Mouse is kind of awesome. The Toy Story rides, both the one that's like Midway Mania, that's like kind of like an arcade game where you get a high score, so something to work on. That one's really fun. Slinky Dog coaster is like probably the best kiddie coaster I've ever been on. It's actually fun to ride. Also good theming, although it's getting a lot of sun damage and they should work on that. And then boom, behind that you got Star Wars Land, and so they've got a really fun Smuggler's Run game, which is also very video gamey and feels kind of like you're in a very fancy simulator to play a video game. And that's that's what it is. Whether you view that as good or bad is kind of depends on what you're looking for from a theme park attraction. And then Rise of the Resistance, which is by far the most complicated prestige spectacle of any ride in history. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but like, if you're at Disney World and you don't get a chance to do Rise of the Resistance, you haven't seen what is possible in that format. And now that Disney is in the business, and this is a post the creation of that ride changed their financial model. Now they're in the business of selling individual tickets to rides again through the form of these like individual lightning lane passes. They can justify that kind of expense, that hilariously over the top production value, can easily make its money back if it can get people to come back and keep paying $20 a ride for it. Whereas before, the economics of figuring out, hey, how can I spend $400 million on this attraction, really came down to some Ouija board spreadsheet math to figure out like how will this affect attendance in the turnstiles relative to a baseline that we are also guessing. So that was really, really difficult before. And so now, like, that ride in particular, I think, like it or not, is so complicated. It's an impressive feat of engineering, and it has some operational challenges as a result. But yeah, so I think, like, yeah, Hollywood Studios got like the most bang for a buck. If you got a friend who wants to ride some rides, that's the place to go. I probably like Magic Kingdom less and less just because it's feeling dated. I never had a tremendous amount of nostalgia for it. I like the Tron coaster pretty well. Tomorrowland has been completely forgotten. It looks shabby and embarrassing. Yeah, I don't have like, my local friends will hate this. Like, I just don't have like a lot of nostalgia. I do. I mean, I went there as a kid, but I just like, I don't. Haunted Mansion's nice, but like doing that once every 4 years is probably better than doing it every month. So yeah, I'm not over there a lot. Also, the alcohol doesn't flow as freely, and that is a factor. At Magic Kingdom, although that's loosening up, they're starting a new lounge with Pirates of the Caribbean across the street over there, and that's going to presumably have alcohol. How does that map to my expectations? I know I'm giving a long answer here, but it's a good question. I could probably go on for a long time just talking about this. I think that I expected by moving here that we would, I think I just extrapolated like, oh, we ride rides all the time. Every time we go here, we ride one of everything. And now the typical cadence is much more relaxed because it's like not special anymore. Keeping things special is always hard in life when you have a lot of exposure to them, you know? And one way I maybe do it is, oh yeah, let's go to the park. You know, it's 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Let's go to the park and we'll go here for dinner and haven't been there in 3 years because there's 350 fucking restaurants. And we'll, you know, maybe let's ride Dinosaur because Dinosaur is closing, and you maybe ride Dinosaur every couple of years, right? And then that way, like when you do go to the park, you're doing something that you haven't done lately. So that sense of novelty is always there. And what I think a lot of fans of the parks appreciate is like everything is subtly changing all the time. So you have those anchor points of like, these are the nostalgic things. Like if you change those, all the fans get really mad. But there's like so many little touches as well. And those ones can shift around that it stimulates the part of your brain that just like wants to see novelty. And so it feels more like a living place. I realize I probably sound real fucking weird to non-theme park living people now that I say this, because I kind of answered the question as if I was talking to Eric. So maybe I should have just kept all this shit to myself. Eric asked another question. I'll save that for next time. How many do I have time for it? Sorry. Actually, I'm blowing through nap time. I'm making good time today. I know I'm doing well when my voice gives out before I hit 3 hours. I need to learn how to use my voice better. Nathan asks, did your prolific twittering actually make you money? I should have read that and thought about what I would answer. I had a misconception in the early goings that if I could develop a huge Twitter following, I would be able to have a huge network of people, right? Like if you have a big social network, let's say you have 500 friends, 500 close friends who would all take a bullet for you. If you have a hardship, you could go to those friends and you could say, hey, I need some help. And they'd cook you dinners, or they'd have you at your house, right? They'd host you. To have a social media follower is so much more distant. It's not a friend. It's not even an acquaintance. It's a person who knows who you are, who thought enough about you to hit follow or subscribe at one point. And so I think my assumption when I went into Twitter, when I got serious about giving it my time, my assumption was if I get a lot of followers, and then whenever, like, because I was a consultant and then starting up a consultancy in 2011 with Todd, my fallacious thought was, and whenever we have availability, then I can turn this to this, at the time, maybe 5,000, eventually it gets to be over 20,000 Twitter followers. I could just like turn around and say, hey, I got people available. And then like turn the crank. And if that many eyeballs sees it, I'm surely like somebody needs programmers. Like I'll get a phone call, I'll get an email, and we'll do some work. I don't know that it ever happened that easily, right? Like I don't know if it was ever as simple as like person who follows me that I can just announce, hey, I need a job to do, and I will charge a fair price for it. I thought that would be really easy because like the need for additional marginal programmers was extremely high that entire fucking decade. What I didn't account for was who's reading it, what mental mode are they in when they're reading it. You might even have a CTO at a company who would totally hire you. But when he's on Twitter, he's thinking he's following sports scores, or he's not in a mood. He's not there for that. And in pre-algorithm, I think the algorithm didn't really start at all until like 2015, maybe 2014. Like pre-algorithm on Twitter, people just scroll past if it wasn't what they were looking for. So I would sometimes, if we had to recruit people, that was always the easier thing to ask. Is like, hey, we've got a great client opportunity. We just need 2 more people to fill this out. I'd often get a few leads for people to hire that I could pass off to recruiting, but it was less than you'd think. And I'm not sure I ever made a single direct dollar that way. Now, the flip side of the story is by having a bunch of followers who were in specific places or had particular second degree connections, or the fact that they followed me meant I could direct message them and reach out and be like, oh, I'm going to be in Austin. I know this person has a connection with somebody at this company. So like I could be much more strategic and effective when I was traveling or going to a conference, right? So using it as an organizing tool, like having the big followership and being really online on Twitter to grow that followership paid off in that way. I remember we went to Lyon for a conference that it made no sense for me to be speaking at a conference in Lyon called, I think, Tech Mix. And it was a very nice event. And my talk went over well. And I met some other speakers. And it was all a good experience. It wasn't strategically sensible. But we were in Lyon and I think it was Becky. She was like, I want ice cream. And so I just tweeted out, anyone know where there's good ice cream in Lyon? And like had 3 people reply with good recommendations. And one of them was like, hey, let's get coffee tomorrow. So I got coffee with the guy, had a great chat. Still connected to him, sort of. Wonder how he's doing. That sort of thing is priceless, right? To know that you could go just fly into any city and find somebody and have some shared connective cultural touch point of like how, at least how you came to follow me, right? And then some connection that way. So, I mean, that paid off for sure. The other big way that it definitely paid off was there was a period of time, and I can't remember what year, where they opened up the form for fill out this form online to demonstrate the degree to which you are a person of interest that should get a blue check. And I saw the form go up and I texted Aaron and I said, we got to fill this out. So it must have been after 2013. It was probably 2014 or 15. Maybe even 16. And I said, like, we got to go fill this out now because this is really fucking dumb. They're going to get a deluge of people submitting this form and then they're going to close the form. So like, let's fill it out. And so I get all the links to all of our talks. We had a little justification for like why we consider ourselves, verifiable. And one of us, I don't remember which, had a follow-up message to like verify a couple things, literally. But both of us got blue checks after. And when you are a co-founder at a company and you had a blue check back then, it really, really conveyed that you were for real. And so even with only, I don't know, 15,000 followers or whatever at the time, people would look at that and be like, well, it might be 15,000, but like it might be the right 15,000. And so I am utterly convinced. I never had a client like literally come out and say, well, we looked at your website and then we checked your Twitter profile and then we saw a blue check and we were like, oh, I guess they are for real. But through context clues, I learned over the course of several years that many, many, many people and businesses were boosting my reputation in their minds based on that blue check. And so when your question, did your prolific Twittering actually make you money? Yes. Like people's sense of my value went way fucking up. More people thought I was notable, and the people who knew me thought I was more notable. And that was really fucking rad. And so if you think about the ROI on being online enough to know that form went up, being I guess self-aware enough or cognizant of the sort of social proof value of that blue check before it became this stupid way to pay Elon money to just, out yourself as a MAGA clown. I guess I can take credit for like those two things, right? That awareness and that the sort of like the seizing that particular opportunity. So the ROI on that particular like one HTML form, I think it was a Google form actually, like is probably the biggest, single high, in terms of like dollars per hour, like that's probably the most valuable hour of my life that I've ever spent. So I think that's interesting. We'll take one more. Will writes, this is about conferences, which I talked about back in version 21, why we still got conferences. I can't remember the last time I checked a conference talk schedule. I may never have. I've always believed the value for me was in the hallway track, meeting people and having conversations. It's why I always preferred multi-track conferences. The presence of a decision of which talk to attend adds an implicit extra option of no talk and makes the hallway track seem more acceptable. Once you can decide not to. I fucked up the inflection, but you get the point. He goes on, but I think that's probably the nut of it. This is an observation that I had, and as a speaker, I hated multi-track for this reason, because I didn't want to dilute the audience between two talks. So I never wanted to feel like I'm in competition with somebody else. In the beginning days, that was because I dropped a pen. That's what that was. Didn't want your imagination to run wild here in Imagination Land with me. In the beginning days, I didn't want to go up against anyone because I assumed that no one would come to my talk. And indeed, I flew fucking to Europe to have 4 people in my talk because I was up against somebody who's super famous. That sucks. So adding the hallway track as yet another place for people to go instead of seeing you, yeah, it fucking sucks. I don't like it. I think everyone should go see my talk all the time because I worked so hard on them. And they're paying to see talks. That's what this is. If you should just have a hallway conf. Like, I mean it. Like that sounds great. Let's have a hallway conf and we just go and we just all chat, right? Like a convention or something. In fact, I think that Will is not alone. A lot of people express this, and I do it too. I don't always find a talk that I want to go to in a particular session block, and there's no problem in that. My problem is like the design of the event. I think that this sort of orthogonal conversation can happen of like, do I go to talks where I receive information unidirectionally, or do I whisper in a hallway with randos for whom I have a shared interest and potentially get something value out of that? The fact that these are like both conversations that are happening about a single event, I think is an indictment on the event's design, where either or both of those things could be better enhanced through better focus and better event design. That's my take. So yes, in-person stuff is great, but like there's got to be a better way to design an event than simply having those two things in particular, of all things, in competition with one another. Rails World tried to do this in the sense that even though there were two tracks and I did go up against somebody and that sucked, they had half an hour talks followed by half an hour of blank. And during that blank was hallway track. It was get food, get drinks, take a break. It was go to the booths and talk to the vendors. It was go to the test double up lab and pair with somebody for 30 minutes on something. I don't know. I do think that conversations are better in person, and it's really nice to be able to have that space to talk to people in person. And it's definitely, I can also believe me saying, hey, start hallway conf doesn't get a lot of people there because it's hard to get on a plane full of people just to go to a different place full of people in a different hallway. But that's, I don't know, man. Conferences don't make any fucking sense. And I'm to be completely honest, I'm totally fine being done with them. I think that they've outlived their usefulness to me individually. And this will shock you. That is normally what I am most concerned about. Speaking of me individually and what I care about, remember you can email me, podcast@searls.co. I would love if you did. Sorry if I feel, if you feel shut down right now, I'm really sorry. But right now I've decided that I don't want to lose my voice. So I'm going to hit this button here that plays that silly song that everyone loves. Even if you listen to it at 2x, where it probably sounds even more exciting. And I'll bid you adieu until next time.